Today, let's make a plant-based braciole.
This is an Italian-style stuffed seitan.
Yes, and it's also a little more involved than some of our other recipes. It's kind of a Sunday dinner kind of thing. You know, you start it after lunch and you eat it for dinner. It does take a little time, but it's worth it. We've tested this a few times now, and it comes out amazing every time. Okay, to start with, we're going to make our filling. Now, the filling in traditional Italian recipes is a lot of different things. You can put all sorts of things in there. We're going to keep it a little bit on the simple side and make it greenish. So I have here about a half cup or so of parsley, Italian flat leaf, by the way, and about a cup of spinach. And I'm just going to chop these up, just a rough chop. Doesn't need to be like minced or pureed. Just smaller pieces is really all we're looking for. Same with the spinach. Mostly it's just for ease of spreading. It'll make more sense in a little while. I made a big deal about the parsley for a reason. The first time we had to test this, I couldn't get Italian flat leaf parsley in our grocery store. They only had curly parsley. I felt it ruined the dish.
He's exaggerating slightly, but he certainly prefers flat leaf Italian to the curly. The
curly stuff is just, it looks pretty on a plate, but I don't really want to eat it. Sorry if that is something that you actually like, but I don't care for it. And I'm going to put this all into a bowl.
This bowl might be too small, but it's okay.
We're going to make it work. We had a smaller bowl when we were getting ready to do this, and I went, I think that might be too small, even though I chose that bowl. Get it all. You know, you paid for it. Every last little tiny bit that's sticking to everything. And all right, that's it. I'm done.
To that, we are going to add a 1/4 cup of pine nuts. Now, we know that pine nuts can be kind of expensive, but we're only using a 1/4 cup in this recipe.
They also add a significant amount of fat, so you want to be careful how much you're adding. This really should serve 2 to 3 people, so it's not that big of a deal.
And to this, we're going to add some of our homemade shaky cheese, 2 tablespoons.
Now, this is basically nutritional yeast. We use almond flour or crushed cashews and some salt. That's really all it is. And what did I need? 2 tablespoons?
2 tablespoons.
Okay.
If you don't want to make your own, any plant-based Parmesan would work just fine.
Right, just much fat content. Trying to keep this a little bit on the low-fat side.
Next up is a tablespoon of minced garlic.
Just 1 tablespoon?
Just 1 tablespoon.
Wow. That's a tablespoon, right?
I find it amusing how he ups the garlic even in his own recipes.
Yep, I wrote it, and I'm still putting more. And now I just want to kind of use a fork and mix this around and press it together, kind of, just to get some of the spinach and parsley broken. Oh, I forgot something.
Fresh ground black pepper.
Half a teaspoon or so is probably good. You'll notice we're not really adding salt to this dish. And that's because, A, the Parmesan has salt in it. We're going to be using other salt alternatives later on for some of the other things, so you don't really need it. That said, if you want to, go for it. But we are trying to do less salt, adding less salt to things. And what we're noticing is things that we used to not think were very salty are now coming out more salty. So as you get used to less salt, you need less salt. If that makes sense. I think it made sense. Okay, so this, I can add any number of other things to this. I actually thought about adding balsamic vinegar to it. I think that might be nice. But today we're going to keep it just sort of on the simple side and leave this filling as is for now.
This is what we used in our test subjects, and it was delicious, so there's no need to add if you don't want to. Now, let's make some seitan.
To start with, I have a half cup of vital wheat gluten. Now, this is important. It looks like flour. That is not flour, okay? Flour still has all the starches and the protein, which is the gluten. This is basically just the gluten from wheat. And I'm saying this because a couple of people have said that they used regular flour or even whole wheat flour to try to make seitan. It doesn't actually work that way. There is a method to do that, but it's called the wash the flour method. We're not using that. This is vital wheat gluten, whole different way of making seitan. This is easier, just so you know.
Next up, we need 2 tablespoons of nutritional yeast.
I'm going to eyeball it because that's how I usually do it when I'm making this. So about 2 tablespoons.
Now we're going to do a teaspoon of garlic powder, onion powder, and smoked paprika.
We should just call garlic powder and onion powder the Wonder Twins of vegan cooking. I'm pretty sure they're in like everything. Now,
I think we have like one, maybe two recipes that don't have both.
yeah, not many. And you can play a little fast and loose with the quantities here. You can put a little bit more, a little bit less. If you know that you're going to be making this for more than, say, 2 people, you can certainly add more vital wheat gluten and then just like double everything or triple it or whatever you need to do. Just remember, this is a stuffed seitan, so the size that you make does matter. Now, in a lot of cooking, they'll make small little rolls and then they'll have 4 or 5 of these in a pan. We're just making one larger roll just because it's easy.
So now we have our dry ingredients. It's time to mix up our wet ingredients. First up is beet juice.
Now, beet juice is here for color, but it also adds a really nice flavor. I've been adding it to meatballs, burgers, seitan steaks, and it really does add some flavor that you kind of miss if it's not there.
So my notes say a fourth to a half cup.
Yep. Because when you're making seitan, you never want to put in all the liquid at once. You just never know if you're going to need it all, so I'm just going to do a 1/4 of a cup right now. And it does actually splatter everywhere when you pour it like I just did.
Next up is a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar.
We're using Bragg's, the only kind that you should be getting. I mean, not really, but it is. What is it, a teaspoon?
Teaspoon.
1 teaspoon?
Yeah.
Wow.
The apple cider vinegar is just there to counter any unusual flavors that you might get from the vital wheat gluten. Sometimes it tastes a little
Like bitter. Some people get an aftertaste from it. The apple cider vinegar makes that go away.
Yeah. Next is soy sauce.
This is a classic for all Italian cooking.
That joke just never gets old. 2 teaspoons of soy sauce.
This is our salt component. And it also adds an umami, depth of flavor. There's so many things going for soy sauce. That's why I use it in a lot of recipes. And then molasses. And how much do we need?
1 tablespoon.
1 tablespoon. Now, molasses is going to add like this irony, rich flavor to it that also adds a little bit of sweetness. This is going to cook for a pretty long time, so we want to keep those flavors in. And I just want to give this a mix through.
What you're looking to do is make sure that the molasses get incorporated with the other liquids other than it, because if you don't, you're going to get a big blob of molasses.
Once that's mixed up, I want to make sure my dry ingredients are homogeneous. Generally speaking, when it comes to seitan, depending on the other liquids that you're adding, you want to use about half the volume in liquid as you do in vital wheat gluten to make the right consistency for most recipes. How's that for being as specific and obtuse as I can be at the same time? Because every recipe is a little bit different.
Yep.
Like even in this one, I'm not going to put all this in at first. I'm going to hold back a little, just in case. And I know you're saying, oh, but that changes the recipe. Yeah, it's a forgiving recipe. Don't get crazy on me. Mix that all through. Okay, I can tell just by looking at that, I'm going to need it all. I might even need more. Now, somebody's going to ask, how can I tell? I've been doing this for a while.
He makes a lot of seitan.
But honestly, it's because there was still a lot of dry in the pan, in the bowl, but it was already starting to feel like it was crumbling. It wasn't really coming together. Like now, it's a totally different feel. It looks more like a wet dough than a crumbly dry dough. It's the easiest way to say it. Look at that. Whoever made this recipe knew what they were doing, because that's the exact amount of liquid that I needed for this. Almost like we test stuff or something. And I'm using the spoon to mix it up as well as I can, because I am not a huge fan of the feel of squishy, wet, sticky things in my hands. So I try to do as much as I can before I have to put my hands in there. Arguably, your hands are the best tools you have, though. So eventually, you do have to use them.
You can also use a spoon and a combination of the mixture itself to get every last drop out of your bowl, the dry and the wet.
Yep. So like that little chunk there, got to get that. It was stuck on the spoon. And now I'll just grab it with my hand and get in there. And like she said, I'm just going to smear it all along the walls of the bowl, getting every last drop. I mean, we didn't ask for, a tablespoon minus what sticks to the bowl when we put ingredients in. We said the tablespoon, so you want it all. But see how that's holding together nicely. It's actually pretty solid already. I haven't even formed any gluten yet. And I like to do this in my hands at first. Even though I don't like the feeling of it, it actually works better when you do it in your hands. Plus, it's so wet right now that it might actually stain my cutting board. So, I'm trying to avoid that too, but not crucial. And then I'll get it on the board and just give it a quick knead, kind of the way I do bread or pasta dough. Okay, once it feels like it's come together pretty good and it's not just crumbling, like it feels, yeah, that's pretty decent. We want to start rolling it out. This is where it gets interesting. I want to make it more or less a square. This is the advantage to cooking with plant stuff, because I can make this a square. It would be much more difficult the traditional way. What I want to do, though, is make sure it doesn't stick to my board. That's very, very important. To aid in a lack of stickage, I got some parchment paper. So I'm just going to pick this whole thing up, slap it on the parchment paper. This way, I can get out my rolling pin and go to town and really roll that out. I could also put another piece of parchment paper on top and roll it that way if I really wanted to. Either way is totally acceptable. If you get a little break in it, just kind of pull it together. It'll work. And I want to basically roll it out in one direction as much as I can and keep it solid if I can. And then turn it and do the other direction too. You want it to be about, I'm going to say between an eighth and a quarter of an inch thick. Any thinner, and it could fall apart too easily. Any thicker, and it could be a little more gummy than you'd like when it's done. I'm going to call that good. At this point, I want to start putting in our filling. Now, obviously, I have probably more filling than I need for just one of these guys. Or do I? Yeah, I have too much. I think when we did this last time, we used less of the filling, but it's okay. If you have extra filling, make more. Braciole, that is. And I just want to like coat the whole braciole with that filling, leaving the edges clear. Okay, there's a reason for that that I'll get to in just a minute. You're kind of making a burrito or a stromboli with the filling and seitan. So I just want to grab the edges and fold it over and roll this guy up. Just nice and careful. Take your time. Don't let it break. Just roll it all the way up, keeping all the filling inside. Just like that. When you get to the ends, just kind of squeeze it all together. There are holes, and that's okay. That'll let some steam out so we don't have a problem later on. The next step is you want to tie this up, because otherwise this could fall apart because it's going to have a long cooking time. So I have some butcher's twine here. Now, I'm not a pro at this. I will just warn you right now. But the way I do it is I just put it about an inch from the end, give myself a little bit of room, and then I tie that off with just a double around that way, pull, and then tie the knot. I'm not making it tight.
This is very soft. You'll just cut it in twain if you try to pull it
Yeah, you'll
tight.
cut right through this. The next piece, I want to go about 2 to 3 fingers, run the string underneath, just kind of very carefully do that, and then run the rest through here. And underneath again. And I know there's somebody out there that does this that is like screaming at the screen right now because I'm doing it all wrong. Hey, you know, this is just how I do it. And again, just like 3 fingers, put it there, get underneath, pick it up, go under and all the way through. Hands are getting a little bit sticky now, so it's more difficult. And under and through again. That just kind of holds that piece in place a little bit. And then for the end, we're going to do the same thing. Just like that. Over, through, and over, and through. Now comes the tricky part. I think I have just enough. I'm going to flip this over. So now you can see the bottom where we have it fully wrapped. And I want to run this through each of these once to hold the bottom part in place. Yet again, do not tie these too tight because you will never get this part done. And under there. I might have just enough to go all the way around to right here. And then on that part, I'm going to just wrap it a couple of times. try to tie it if I can. I can tie it. And there we go. One tied up seitan. In a perfect world, my first tie would have had another couple inches so I could go all the way around this side too, but it's okay. Don't beat yourself up over it. As long as it more or less holds together. It's also, I'll be honest, sort of for decoration because it's a big part of a braciole being all tied up and trust, that's the word. But it's not absolutely necessary for this exact one. But let's move over to the stove and start cooking. Okay, so I have my pan going over medium to medium-high heat. We'll take our braciole, drop it in. You should hear a sizzle. Now, probably don't want to be as violent as I was with that, but you want to hear a sizzle when you put it in there. And what we're going to do is we're going to brown it on all sides. And no, I am not using any oil in the pan. Okay, the trick here is make sure that your pan was nice and hot when you started, and then just kind of loosen it up a little bit. Yep, that should do. And I want to flip this guy over. Just lift the pan a little bit, and over we go. See? Nice and brown on there. That's what we're looking for. I'm going to get a spatula, though. It might make life easier for me. Every couple of minutes, just give that a flip. See that browning? That's actually what we're looking for. Believe it or not, that's what we want. If you find that it is sticking and you cannot get it to come up, just a little bit of veggie broth in the pan. Get that steam nearby, and then it should come totally loose, just like that. It'll break up a little bit. That's okay. Remember I was saying about making it too thin? Well, I might have made it a little too thin. All right, so once we have it browned, we're going to add in chopped up medium onion. Yes, I cut it on the same cutting board that I made the seitan, so it has a pinkish hue. Now I want to get it off the bottom and on top of those onions, just so that it doesn't stick and burn. Nope, just like that. Next, I'm going to add 2 cans of no salt added diced tomatoes. These are 14.5 ounce cans. And I'm going to turn the heat down to probably about 3 on my stove. And I'm going to season with some fresh cracked black pepper. Half a teaspoon. However much you like, really. Going to add a tablespoon of minced garlic. You can use whole cloves if you want to. It's probably like 2 to 3 cloves. Just kind of mix it around. And I always make this joke about Italian food and soy sauce, but soy sauce. 1 tablespoon of soy sauce. That's just the richness and umami that I really like. It makes it meatier. 1 tablespoon of dried basil. Just do like a teaspoon on each side here. 1 tablespoon of dried thyme. Same story as the basil. Now, I don't feel that any tomato sauce is complete without a little bit of red pepper flake. It doesn't really make it spicy, but it adds this extra depth that you just don't get any other way. I did about maybe half a teaspoon. And then a cup of white wine. Now, the white wine adds such a rich depth of flavor to this, and about a cup. I mean, you can be like Julia Child and have a glass while you're making it if you want to. But I just feel that it adds so much to this dish. The alcohol does cook out, though. And then mix that around. We want all those herbs to be in the liquid. This is going to become our sauce. Make sure your seitan is not sticking to the bottom. You want it definitely not on the bottom here. Now, put a lid on it and let that simmer for about an hour. One thing that I like to do, though, is from time to time, take the lid off and cover that seitan with some of the liquid in there. Just to kind of give it a little blanket, to keep it cooking. Okay, so it's been about half an hour into our 1 hour, but here's what I'd like to do now. Because we have all this lovely sauce all over the place, let me uncover this a little bit so you can see what it looks like too. Look at that. See, it's firming up. It's becoming a full-on seitan, just like we like. I want to make sure it's not stuck in the pan. There we go. We have all this sauce. Why not add some pasta? So I have cavatappi here, about 8 ounces of it that I'm just going to sprinkle around. You can use the pasta of your choice. Penne works really nice in this. We just happen to have this cavatappi lying around, and I said, you know what? We never use it. Let's put it in this. I want to make sure they can all get under liquid. If they can't, it's okay to add a little bit more liquid at this point, like I'm going to do. And for that, my liquid of choice is our veggie broth. I just want to make sure they're just covered something like that. That was probably another cup in total. And I'm going to put it to about 4 on my stove, which is going to bring this up to a boil slowly. But this way we can cook those noodles right into that sauce. It's also going to be left open, no lid on it. That way the liquid will slowly cook down over time and thicken up that sauce. It'll also let all that alcohol from the wine escape if anybody was concerned about that. And I will come by and give it a stir every 5 or 10 minutes or so, just because, you know, you got to play with your food, right? Okay, so I took the seitan out, and now I'm just cooking down the liquid for the pasta just a little bit, get that pasta all nice and done. But look at how lovely and velvety that sauce has become. Just really, really awesome. So I'll just put this to low and let this cook for probably another 10-15 minutes. All right, the braciole is cooked. The pasta is still going. I just want to cut off a couple of these strings for right now so I can start cutting this so we can sample it. All right, so first slice in. Another slice. Now let's see what it looks like inside. Ooh, look at that filling. Pine nuts coming out. Oh, that's so pretty. Now, for the best part of every cooking video, we get to taste it. I got a knife out.
I don't think it's going to be necessary.
Nope.
Oh, look at that.
Nope, just cut right through it.
So I sprinkled a little bit of our extra filling on top of our pasta and, of course, some more shaky cheese on there just to give it a little bit of dressing, if you will.
Okay. This is amazing. It looks like braciole. It has the firmness that you would expect from a good seitan. Very meaty is one way to describe it. It also has that softness of slow cooked, like pot roast or braciole, you know, like I remember it being. And then the pasta cooked in the braising liquid like that makes this velvety sauce that is so amazing. I mean, I can't even put into words how to describe this.
The herbs and the white wine really give this such a rich and decadent flavor profile. This tastes like something you would get at a fancy restaurant.
Yep. All in all, probably about 2 hours to make, which isn't so bad considering. I mean, I've spent a lot longer making things that didn't taste nearly quite this good. But it's all about cooking the seitan properly and getting the pasta cooked along with everything else so that you have this lovely dish at the end. Now, let's talk storage options. Honestly, you could put that seitan right into the fridge and store it overnight and reheat it the next day. It'll probably be even better.
Yeah.
Okay. The rest, the pasta might soak up more liquid. So I guess you could take the whole dish and put it in there, but I don't know that I would. I might cook the pasta the next day.
Yeah.
That might be the better way to go.
I agree.
As far as freezing, you could freeze the braciole, you could freeze the pasta, but I wouldn't freeze them together. I'm going to have another bite, sorry.
I'm trying to show resistance because I just want to get in there and eat the whole thing. And this is going to be our dinner, so I can't do that. We have to save
We
that.
have the rest of it in the pan. But honestly, guys, this is really amazing. It's a way to elevate seitan into something completely different and unique.
Right. If you're looking to make something extra special and to impress your friends, try this recipe.
Yeah, absolutely. And as always, guys, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on The Bistro.